I think what people need to understand, we need great leadership in this time across all levels.
Like you called for Cathy Engelbert's resignation.
So I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened.
The image is burned into the collective memory of every sports fan who tuned in on Christmas Day 2025. Amidst the high-stakes NBA broadcasts and the massive Netflix NFL window, a single commercial didn't just air, it detonated. Nike's From Anywhere campaign featuring Caitlin Clark wasn't just a 60-second spot for a basketball player. It was a declaration of a new world order in professional sports. As we sit here in January 2026, it is clear that we are no longer just watching a basketball league. We are watching a billion-dollar experiment in how rapid commercial expansion can collide with institutional fragility. The WNBA is currently navigating its most profound paradox. Externally, it is basking in a golden age of visibility and capital, but internally, the foundation is cracking under the weight of a leadership crisis and a labor war that threatens to derail everything. Think about the sheer scale of that Nike launch. Within 48 hours, that advertisement racked up over 50 million views across social media. That isn't just a good numbers day for a sports star. That is a viral event on the level of a global pop icon. When you deconstruct the ad itself, you see exactly what Nike is trying to do. They aren't marketing Caitlin Clark as the best player in the WNBA. They are marketing her as a transcendent cultural asset. It starts on the asphalt, a gritty, pure basketball aesthetic designed to silence the critics who say she's just a media creation. Then the challenges escalate. She isn't just playing against other WNBA players. She's being validated by a carefully curated constellation of cultural titans. You have Travis Scott, who bridges the gap to the streetwear and hip-hop community. You have the Kelsey brothers, Jason and Travis, who bring in that massive NFL audience and the New Heights demographic. And then there's Michael Che, which is a brilliant bit of meta-commentary, acknowledging the Saturday Night Live jokes and proving that Clark is in on the joke. By the time the commercial hits its climax and she drains a shot from the logo before looking at the camera and saying "From Anywhere," the message is clear. This isn't just about her shooting range, it's about the meritocratic American dream. She came from Iowa, she came from anywhere, and now she's peer-to-peer with the biggest names in music and football. But while that ad was conquering the digital space, a much darker reality was setting in behind the scenes at Nike's headquarters. Investors are looking at a stock that has been struggling, down significantly over the last few years, and they are desperate for this Clark revenue to hit the balance sheet. This creates a massive tension. We have the hype, we have the 50 million views, but where is the shoe? The signature shoe isn't scheduled until later in 2026. This 18-month product development cycle is clashing with a viral economy that moves at the speed of a TikTok trend. Fans are frustrated. They're seeing broken links and limited stock for apparel. There is a sloppy feel to the rollout that suggests even a giant like Nike wasn't fully prepared for the sheer velocity of the Caitlin Clark effect. This brings us to the shadow campaign. You cannot talk about the rise of Caitlin Clark without talking about Aja Wilson. Nike is playing a very sophisticated, very dangerous game of market segmentation. While Clark represents the expansion, the crossover appeal to the casual NFL fan and the international market, Aja Wilson represents the soul. Her "Of Course I Have a Shoe" campaign, released back in May 2025, was a masterclass in heritage and identity. It featured HBCU culture, the Benedict College cheerleaders, and a creative direction by Malia Obama. It was artistic, intentional, and deeply rooted in the Black collegiate experience. The A1 shoe itself, with its pearlized elements as a tribute to her grandmother, speaks to a core WNBA fan base that has been there since day one. The problem is that the digital media ecosystem, the clickbait industrial complex on YouTube and social media, doesn't do nuance. They see these two different marketing strategies and they spin them into a narrative of jealousy and hatred. We see titles every day claiming Aja Wilson is furious or that Nike is dumping her for Clark. It's a content trope designed to drive clicks by projecting racial and professional insecurities onto these athletes. Even when legends like Cheryl Swoops come out and say it's about time Wilson got her shoe, the algorithm ignores it in favor of the rivalry narrative. This creates a reality distortion field where every business decision is interpreted as a personal insult. Wilson's campaign was lauded for its depth, but it didn't hit 50 million views in 2 days. In the eyes of the internet, that's a loss, and that loss is being weaponized to divide the fan base. But as intense as the sneaker wars are, they pale in comparison to the firestorm currently engulfing the WNBA Commissioner's office. Cathy Engelbert is currently facing a leadership crisis that might be the most significant in the league's history. It all traces back to a comment that has become the rally cry for player unrest: lucky stars. According to Nafisa Collier, during a discussion about the new media rights deal, Engelbert allegedly told the players they should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the deal she secured. The fallout from this was instantaneous and scorched earth. To understand why this hit so hard, you have to understand the power dynamics. Engelbert comes from a corporate background at Deloitte. She views the league through the lens of a technocratic turnaround CEO. To her, the $2.2 billion media deal is a metric of success that the players should be grateful for. But to the players, women like Aja Wilson, Nafisa Collier, and Angel Reese, the deal isn't a gift from the commissioner. It's the result of their labor. It's the result of the viewership spikes they created. When Engelbert says on their knees, she is using language that carries historically charged connotations of submission. It felt paternalistic, and it felt like she was claiming credit for a success that belongs to the talent on the floor. The response from the players was a unified front of disgust. Angel Reese was posting 10-10 no notes in support of Collier's exit interview. The league office tried to manage the crisis with a denial, calling the account inaccurate, but the damage was done. Owners are reportedly becoming restless, fearing that Engelbert's inability to maintain a working relationship with the stars could lead to a lockout or a strike just as the league is hitting its peak. This is the founder's trap. Engelbert wants credit for saving the business, but in sports, the players are the business. You can't tell the goose that laid the golden egg to be thankful to the farmer, especially when the goose knows exactly how much that egg is worth on the open market. This tension between labor and capital is most visible when you look at the raw numbers. Let's talk about the economic reality of 2026. Caitlin Clark is set to earn roughly $85,000 in salary from the Indiana Fever this year. Meanwhile, her Nike deal is worth about $3.5 million annually. She is literally making 40 times more from her shoe sponsor than from her employer. This structural inequality is exactly why the Players Association has opted out of the current collective bargaining agreement. The players are looking at the Clark effect, the sold-out arenas, the record-breaking merchandise sales, and they are demanding a model closer to the NBA's 50-50 revenue split. They want higher caps so they don't have to play in Europe or China during the off-season. They want consistent charter flights and better pregnancy benefits. They know their market value is being artificially suppressed by an outdated salary structure, and they aren't going to wait around for lucky stars to align anymore. This is where the Unrivaled experiment comes in. Founded by Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, this 3-on-3 league was designed to be the alternative, a way for players to make real money domestically during the winter. They went after Caitlin Clark with everything they had, $1 million salary for 3 months, and a significant equity stake in the league. She turned it down. The speculation is that she needed rest, that she was protecting her brand from burnout, or that she didn't want to dilute her exclusivity in a startup environment. But the launch of Unrivaled in January 2026 provided us with a fascinating control group for the Clark effect. Without Clark, Unrivaled averaged about 221,000 viewers. Its championship game peaked at 385,000. Now, for a startup league on cable, those are healthy, respectable numbers. They prove that there is a solid floor for women's basketball, a hardcore fan base that exists regardless of who is playing. But when you compare that to the millions of people who tune in for a Caitlin Clark game, or the 50 million who watched her ad, you see the ceiling without her. The gap between 300,000 and 2.5 million is the Clark premium. It quantifies her specific economic value. It shows that while interest in the sport is rising, the mania is still very much localized around one person. This puts the WNBA in a precarious position. They need to capitalize on the Clark mania without alienating the base that supports the rest of the league. And then there is the digital battlefield. We have to talk about how the algorithm is radicalizing the fandom. We have these YouTube channels and social media aggregators that thrive on outrage. They take a real event like a shoe release or a press conference quote, and they amplify the emotional stakes to a melodramatic level. They create hero and villain archetypes. Clark is cast as the savior or the victim of jealousy, while Aja Wilson or Cathy Engelbert are cast as the obstacles. This creates a feedback loop where casual fans start to believe these players actually hate each other, despite the fact that most of them are simply fighting for the same goal: professional respect and fair pay. This clickbait industrial complex is a stakeholder in this league whether we like it or not. It shapes the narrative that the players have to respond to every single day. When you step back and look at the whole picture, The from anywhere era is defined by friction. It is the friction of a startup scaling 100 times overnight. The old ways of doing things, the paternalistic leadership, the modest expectations, the grateful to be here attitude, they are all obsolete. The WNBA is currently a high-stakes labor drama disguised as a basketball league. The tension between the commissioner and the players isn't just a feud, it's a fundamental disagreement about who owns the success of the sport. The tension between the marketing of Clark and Wilson isn't just competition, it's a test of whether a league can sustain multiple types of superstardom at once. As we move through 2026, the stakes couldn't be higher. We are heading toward a CBA showdown that will determine the financial future of the sport for the next decade. We are waiting for the actual products, the shoes, the apparel, to catch up to the marketing hype, and we are watching to see if the leadership can evolve fast enough to keep the whole thing from splintering. The Caitlin Clark era has brought the money, the fans, and the global spotlight, but it has also exposed every crack in the foundation. The From Anywhere manifesto tells us that the sport can go anywhere, but the question remains, is the league's infrastructure strong enough to actually handle the trip? The reality of the 2026 landscape is that the product on the floor has never been more valuable, but the governance of that product has never been more fragile. We see this in the way the Lucky Stars comment continues to haunt every press conference. We see it in the way every Nike stock fluctuation is blamed on the Clark rollout. We see it in the unrivaled viewership numbers that remind us just how much the league relies on a single gravitational pull. The WNBA is no longer a niche interest, it is a central pillar of the pop culture conversation. But with that central position comes a level of scrutiny and a demand for professional excellence that the league's front office is clearly struggling to meet. For the players, the mission is clear. They are no longer asking for a seat at the table. They are pointing out that they built the table. They are leveraging their social media followings, their endorsement deals, and their on-court performance to force a total reimagining of what a women's sports league can be. They are done with the charity mindset. They are businessmen and businesswomen who know their ROI. When Nafisa Collier goes on a scorched earth tour, she isn't just venting, she is negotiating. When Aja Wilson emphasizes Black girlhood and HBCU roots in her marketing, she isn't just being artistic, she is asserting the cultural ownership of the game's history. This is the state of the WNBA in 2026. It is a league in transition, caught between its modest past and its explosive future. The From Anywhere campaign was the opening bell for this new chapter. But the real story is what happens when the cameras turn off and the lawyers and agents enter the room. The range has been extended. The shots are being taken from the logo. Now we just have to see if the organization can keep from collapsing under the weight of its own success. The economic disparity remains the most glaring issue. When people see the millions of views on a Nike ad, they assume the players are wealthy. But the reality for the average WNBA player is still a far cry from their NBA counterparts. The hard salary cap is a chokehold on the league's growth. It prevents teams from paying players what they are worth, which in turn fuels the need for these outside ventures like Unrivaled or overseas contracts. This is the core of the anger directed at Commissioner Engelbert. She points to a $2.2 billion deal as a sign of health, but the players see it as a ceiling that they didn't agree to. They see the revenue sharing being triggered only after certain benchmarks that they feel were set too high. There is also the matter of the Clark effect on the rest of the league's roster. While the Indiana Fever has seen a massive influx of attention, other teams are navigating the challenges of increased travel demands and security needs without a proportional increase in their operational budgets. The implementation of charter flights has been a step forward, but the consistency of that implementation is still a point of contention. Some players are still reporting delays and logistical hurdles that their male counterparts haven't dealt with in decades. It's these lifestyle issues that often trigger the most visceral reactions from the players because they speak to a lack of basic professional respect. And we can't ignore the cultural impact on the next generation. The From Anywhere ad showed youth players challenging Clark, and that is a real-world phenomenon. Participation in girls' basketball is spiking. The Caitlin Clark effect on youth sports is a tangible, measurable metric. But if those young girls grow up and see a league where the stars are at war with the commissioner, or where the veterans feel disrespected by the marketing of the rookies, what kind of future are they being sold? The American dream narrative that Nike is using is powerful, but it needs to be backed up by a league that actually functions like a professional dream. The leadership analysis of Cathy Engelbert suggests a fundamental disconnect in communication styles. She is speaking the language of the boardroom stability, incremental growth, and fiscal responsibility. The players are speaking the language of a social movement, equity, respect, and immediate recognition of value. These two worldviews are currently at a total impasse. The Lucky Stars gaffe wasn't just a mistake, it was a symptom of this linguistic and cultural gap. It showed that the person at the top doesn't fully grasp the identity of the people she is leading. She sees employees, they see themselves as the architects of a revolution. As we head deeper into this year, the Unrivaled experiment will continue to serve as a vital data point. If they can grow that 220,000 floor into something bigger, it will prove that the league's value is diversifying. If it stays stagnant, it will only increase the pressure on the WNBA to keep Caitlin Clark happy at all costs. This creates a star system dynamic that can be very healthy for a league's bottom line, but very toxic for its internal culture. We saw this in the early days of the NBA with Magic and Bird, but the WNBA is navigating this in the age of the 24-hour social media outrage cycle, which makes everything 10 times more volatile. Ultimately, the From Anywhere era is a story about the friction of progress. It's about what happens when a niche product suddenly becomes a global commodity. It's about the struggle to maintain a sport's soul while selling its image to the highest bidder. Nike, the WNBA, and the players are all currently trying to figure out how to coexist in this high-pressure environment. The commercial was a manifesto, but the reality is a grind. Every shot Clark takes from the logo is a reminder of how far the game has come, and every headline about player unrest is a reminder of how far the league still has to go. The WNBA is no longer just the women's league. It is a central battlefield for the future of sports business, labor rights, and cultural representation. Whether you're looking at it through the lens of a sneakerhead, a financial analyst, or a basketball purist, you can't look away. The range has been redefined, the stakes have been raised, and as the 2026 season approaches, the only thing we know for sure is that the Lucky Stars are no longer enough. The players want the whole galaxy, and they've proven they have the talent and the leverage to go get it. When you look at the constellation of celebrities in that Nike ad again, think about the message of transcendence. Nike isn't just selling sneakers, they are selling a world where a female athlete can be the biggest story in sports, period. Not women's sports, just sports. But to get to that world, the WNBA has to survive its own growth. It has to resolve the Lucky Stars crisis. It has to fix its broken economic model in the 2026 CBA, and it has to find a way to market Aja Wilson's soul and Caitlin Clark's expansion as two sides of the same coin rather than opposing forces.